done all the things a wife is supposed to do. The house, the meals. Where is the payback?
That was from Love and Death.
On this episode of Why Watch That.
Why Watch That's on a quest to help you find the movies and TV shows you'll love. Buckle in. Candy, played by Elizabeth Olsen, is bored with her husband Pat, played by Patrick Fugit, and their life in general.
You always want more. You do, Candy. Whatever you have, you always want more.
Yes, I do. And I'm not going to apologize for it.
So after her church pastor and best friend Jackie, played by Elizabeth Marvel, has a change in her own marital status and decides to leave town, Candy's inspired and comes up with a bright idea.
It is human nature to take risks, to go for something with a little thrill at the risk of falling.
Oh! Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Are you sure?
I'm very attracted to you.
Oh.
Would you be interested in having an affair?
So that took quite the turn, and it isn't something that Jackie endorses. But having some excitement with Alan, played by Jesse Plemons, a married guy on the church choir and council, just seems like the perfect fit. I mean, it's not like she's going to fall in love with him. Even still, they need to establish meticulous ground rules, most notably this one.
We can never allow Betty or Pat to get hurt.
Never, ever.
And just like that roller coaster, what goes up must come down. But you can't blame Pat. He's a nice guy. He's just not exciting, which ain't a crime. And when it comes to Alan's wife, Betty, played by Lily Rabe, she's harder to take, but they're trying for a baby. And she ain't no dummy.
You two just looked at each other like you got a secret.
And with that seed planted, things escalate. But at first, everything's friendly. Betty even wants to
Have you and Pat over. She wants me to come to dinner. Now, you need to be careful.
if only she'd listened to Sherry, played by Kristen Ritter, who's her friend, but not the kind of friend Pastor Jackie was, which means that Sherry's just there to pass the time. I mean, who would take her seriously? Well, we just might find out after Candy crosses the Rubicon with Betty. Just what's going to happen when Candy and Alan are found out.
Betty! Betty?
Betty's dead.
Oh my God.
They say she was murdered with an axe.
An axe?
More than likely, Betty Gore was murdered by someone she knew.
Did you kill your wife? No. I did have an affair with Candy Montgomery.
Are you all right?
Yeah, then I'd be all right.
Will that facade ever break? Well, the authorities are gonna find out.
You just chopped and chopped and chopped.
I didn't do it.
I think you did.
You're wrong.
This is Texas. Folks might be able to forgive murder, adultery, not so much.
The jury needs to see you as human. And the truth has a way of coming out.
All right, HBO Max, coming through with the Love and Death. Totally watching this one.
I knew it.
Totally watching this one.
Now, did you see Candy on Hulu? That was released last year with Jessica Biel.
No.
Same story.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happened is they were filmed concurrently, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Candy, they might have had the idea to start production first, but then Love and Death did shortly after. But Love and Death got the rights to the story, but the story is in the public domain, so it doesn't really matter. Like there's this whole thing. And they didn't realize that they both were doing it until they were both filming. Because I believe Love and Death started filming before Candy. But Candy ended up being released before Love and Death.
Mm.
So, the creators of this and everybody was like, we were shocked when we found out that they were doing Candy, but what can you do? So the question is, do we need either of these
Both.
stories? Do we need, what's happening there? It comes down to the central performance. Jessica as Candy is committed, definitely. That's Jessica Biel. She is committed to her craft. But Elizabeth is just a more natural actor. More effortless, more open. She's breathing. Her beats are clean. And watching her, I was thinking to myself, okay, this woman's facade, how long has she had it? Her whole life. She doesn't even realize she has one. Right? And she'll say, she seems like what she's saying she doesn't mean, but she really does mean it. Like Elizabeth's acting is more flexible. There's more nuance. So there's more of a chance to have bigger leaps. So if she's going to swing this axe, it's more of a leap, which it should be. Whereas when I was watching Jessica's characterization, it was more believable. She would swing the axe. I was just like, yeah. It's just a difference there in the way Elizabeth handles all of those different nuances. It's a more nuanced, again, flexible performance. I think for their supporting cast, they are both professional. They get the job done, both of them. I might prefer Love and Death's supporting cast a hair, even though there is Melanie Linsky in Candy playing Betty. Lily Rabe again in this version. And I like Jessie Muller in Candy as well, playing Sherry, I believe, for that. But, both of those casts are fine. And frankly, it's not that Jessica Biel was bad. Elizabeth Olsen is just better. So if you haven't seen Candy, I would probably come to Love and Death just because of Elizabeth Olsen. If you have seen Candy, the question is, do you want to go through this story again? I don't know that Love and Death is worth that outside of what Elizabeth is doing. Now, of course, we have Jesse Plemons and Patrick Fugit, and, you get some good performances out of these people outside of Elizabeth, but that would be the main thing. Do you want to go through it all again? I think that the start of this show, the first episode, it just glided along. I like that better because at the beginning of Candy, they start in two different parts of the story. For Candy, it's a bit darker early on, it has more of an edge just in general. This is from David E. Kelly, so it's a bit sunnier and breezier anyway. But in Candy, where they start, you see the crime. That's what's happening there from the beginning. So, okay, they start there. Whereas here, they start before it. We set up the world, her, life, what's going on at church, how she starts to look at Jesse Plemons' character, and you get glimpses of what's to come. I'd like that approach a bit better, I have to say. It was more inviting for me. When I started Candy, I remember watching it and going in and going, I don't really want to see this. I don't care. That's how I felt. This was more, again, inviting to me in the first episode. Then it starts to sag a bit as they move through the story, but it's all propped up by Elizabeth. I always found her interesting watching it. So I did go through the first 3 episodes, which have been released as of this recording, and they released the first 3 on purpose. Because when you get to the end of episode 3 in their timeline, you understand, you can imagine where they end at before we move forward into court case and other things like that with Tom Pelfrey's character. Okay. So that's what you have to contend with if you've seen Candy. They're going through the story in a different order. It has a bit of a tonal difference, but still it's the same story. So, I don't know, again, if it's worth it to go back through it. But if you're going to start it and you haven't seen Candy, I would start here. That's my main thing. But also know, Candy's shorter. Candy is 5 episodes, and this will tell the story in 7. Do they need 7? Probably not. So it's a mixed bag in both. But again, to say it once more,
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Olsen, she's probably going to be nominated for this. That's where probably it would be shocking so far this year if she weren't nominated. I don't know which Emmys ceremony that would be, if it's this year's or next, but it would be a surprise with the work that she's put in, because there's a lot going on underneath the surface. So with that said, producer, are you going to start with Candy? Are you going to start with Love and Death? Are you going to start with neither? What do you think?
Love and Death is probably where I'll start.
There you go.
Well.
Thanks for joining us. For up-to-date info and to share what's on your watch list, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Why Watch That, and on Twitter at WWT Radio. Also, you can visit us at whywatchthat.com. And while you're at it, don't forget to go ahead and rate Why Watch That Radio on iTunes. Let's keep the conversation going.